Excellencies, you may now be seated. It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta to expound on his vision for a just and peaceful, prosperous world.
Today we are meeting as partners in a common cause to forge a shared vision as we advance progress in Kenya as well as globally. And indeed, to quote John F. Kennedy, and I quote, "History has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies," end of quote. And as friends and partners, as well as allies, we are more successful, I believe, when we understand each other's visions, as well as our aspirations, and we work together to fulfill it. The purpose of this briefing, as the Minister has just foresaid, is to appraise you on key issues and developments in Kenya and the region, as well as to expound Kenya's position on global issues of mutual interest, forging this shared understanding in a particularly crucial time when our world faces major realignments as well as disruptions. This is our first such meeting and first such address, and it is indeed my hope that from here henceforth it shall be an annual event. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is no question that Kenya is an open and democratic society, and our strong democratic credentials extend beyond our domestic context to the global sphere. They inform our foreign policy and underpin our commitment to maintain regular engagements with you, the diplomatic corps, and these interactions typify our commitment to foster greater understanding, deepen our partnerships, and leverage opportunities for our common good. Securing our interdependent future depends on us growing our respective economies, further deepening the democratization of our governance, ensuring the equitable distribution of resources, as well as managing our diversity at home, as well as also maintaining our global ecological balance. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our agenda here in Kenya. This transformative agenda is anchored in the aspirations of our Kenya Vision 2030, which serves as a vehicle for accelerating transformation of our country into a rapidly industrializing, prosperous middle-income nation by the year 2030. So, ladies and gentlemen, 7 years into my term as president, I have focused on an agenda to build a united country with a fast-growing economy, where wealth is created, where prosperity is shared fairly amongst all our citizens. And this entails creating more and decent jobs, raising living standards of every Kenyan, ending inequality, and lifting more Kenyans out of poverty. Further, we all understand that the COVID-19 pandemic has adversely affected the implementation of our Big Four agenda, with a necessitating reduction in revenues occasioned to ease the burden on the majority, especially lower-income Kenyans. Significant financial resources have had to be reallocated also to address the effects of the pandemic amidst a slowdown in economic activity. The economic and social disruptions induced by COVID-19 have eroded some of the progress that we had made in recent years, and our private sector especially faces lower demand due to reduced consumption, as well as demands for inputs. And these challenges have been compounded further by growing uncertainty, disrupted supply chains, and limited fiscal space. This is not a phenomena particular to Kenya, as it is indeed a phenomena that globally challenges each and every one of us. More than any time before, we have to contemplate a future together as a community of nations, noting our global interlinkages, our common fragilities, but also our collective strengths that we individually and collectively possess. The onus is therefore upon us all, in recognition of the urgency of our time, to renew the resolve and commitment to direct our efforts and to unite our strengths in building a common future of shared prosperity. I want to conclude by taking this opportunity to recognize the support and contribution that I have received from my Cabinet Secretary, the Chief Administrative Secretary, the Principal Secretary, and their entire team at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, remain engaged at extremely high risk to themselves. I also want to recognize the great work of all our ambassadors abroad and their teams, and in particular, their contribution to our national effort to secure the United Nations Security Council seat, and I am proud of all our achievements together in what was indeed a most difficult year in 2020. I conclude by urging all of us to turn to COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to strengthen international cooperation, to be our brothers and sisters' keeper as we work towards recovery. Equally important, we must become bold and ambitious in redefining new models of cooperation that will support sustainable recovery and lead to the achievements of the 2030 Agenda. We need to maintain global cooperation and solidarity. As we pull ourselves out of this pandemic, it will be important to ensure that we vaccinate all vulnerable groups as a matter of urgency, and that we resist the temptation to hoard vaccines. Vaccine nationalism, ladies and gentlemen, is deplorable and should not be tolerated by any one of us. It is imperative that vaccines are made available equitably to all who need them, irrespective of their nationality, race, or creed, everywhere in the world. This is the immediate challenge of our time. During the past year, Kenya has enjoyed considerable support from many countries from all over the world. And many of these countries are represented here today, and I want to thank all countries that have given our country the assistance that we required at our hour of need. In this context, I would like to recognize the support that we have received from the Republic of Cuba, a brotherly country from the global south, which despite its size and limited resources, has continued to provide help to Kenyans and my administration throughout the year of the COVID-19 crisis. It gives me great pleasure today also to announce that my administration has made the decision to reciprocate the generosity and kindness that has been extended to our diplomats abroad in countries such as France and Russia, where our diplomats have been vaccinated against COVID-19 by their host governments. My administration will extend the same courtesy to eligible diplomats resident in Kenya, including those of the United Nations, on an agreed schedule that will be announced by the Ministry of Health soon. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to grapple with the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot lose sight of other global challenges that confront us and threaten the stability and sustainability of our shared planet. Kenya was honored to co-lead the UN Secretary General's inaugural Climate Action Summit. The summit adopted commitments that are fair to all and which will support jobs, clean air for better health, and protect the most vulnerable against the impacts of climate change. So Kenya once again urges the international community to endeavor to implement these commitments. And once again, during a recent call with President Biden of the United States, he once again reiterated the United States' commitment to back these far-reaching initiatives that are vital for our planet's health. Our engagement also includes scaling up cooperation with China through the China-Africa Cooperation FOCAC, and also with Japan through the Tokyo International Conference on Africa's Development, TICAD. Critically, these and similar engagements are anchored in the reinvigorated East African community whose chairmanship I assumed last weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa continues and remains an integral part of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Organization. This grouping is the second largest multilateral grouping of countries after the United Nations. It networks developing countries in special and meaningful ways to deal with development challenges such as sustainable development, climate change, as well as pandemics. This was the context in which last year I convened and chaired, as the President in Office of the organization, the first ever intersessional virtual summit at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, Your Excellencies, as you all know, Kenya remains a steadfast advocate for multilateralism as well as a rule-based global order. Kenya has been a force for good globally and has made an outsized contribution to global affairs, such as the development of the Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations 2030 Agenda, all of which saw the recognition of our Ambassador Macharia Kamau by the Secretary General for the role that he in particular played in seeing these development goals achieved or implemented and adopted. However, contemporary challenges have laid bare the limits of our multilateral institutions. Transactional politics, zero-sum global politics, protectionism, unilateral sanctions, treaty withdrawals, and even military and economic coercion has impeded multilateralism. These conditions are worsened by transnational organized crimes, terrorism, as well as cybersecurity threats. This, I believe, necessitates an urgent re-engineering of the global order in a manner that not only addresses contemporary concerns, but also meets the hopes and aspirations of all people in the present, as well as in future generations. We have useful post-COVID-19 lessons to draw from as we re-engineer the global order. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I move on, let me take this opportunity to once again thank each and every one of you for the support to Kenya's election to the African Peace and Security Council, that is specifically to our African brothers and sisters, and to all of you for your support in us obtaining a seat at the United Nations Security Council. Now more than ever, it is imperative that we reimagine the future and chart a bold new course for mankind to successfully navigate the peace and security issues that we face. It is this singular commitment that drives Kenya's membership at the United Nations General Assembly and its subsidiary bodies, as well as Kenya's tenure at the United Nations Security Council, and also during our tenure at the African Union Peace and Security Council. Our contribution at the United Nations Security Council, and indeed across all multilateral fora, is anchored in an enduring hope and the firm belief that together we can indeed create a better world. The seemingly intractable challenges to peace, security, and development that confronts us today are an opportunity to introspect. Our differences, I believe, are an opportunity to negotiate innovative engagements which secure peace and prosperity for all. Kenya will continue to work closely with all member states to ensure that the United Nations Security Council discharges its mandate in an inclusive, responsive, as well as a consultative manner. As a member of the African Union Peace and Security Council, Kenya will build bridges between the two bodies in working towards greater peace, stability, and prosperity of our African continent. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic notwithstanding, Kenya has maintained critical contacts throughout the last year. And since January 2020, I have had the pleasure to visit France, Italy, the Vatican, the United Kingdom, as well as the United States. I have also hosted the heads of state and government from Ethiopia, Germany, Somaliland, as well as delegations from Algeria, Japan, Nicaragua, Saudi Arabia, and the United Kingdom, amongst others. We have also maintained strong international engagement and cooperation through video conferences, which I made, and numerous calls from presidents and prime ministers from various countries, including Barbados, Bangladesh, Canada, China, India, Jamaica, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Turkey, the United States, and most of my brothers and sisters across the African continent. These efforts serve to not only deepen the excellent ties between our countries, but also sought to help build global consensus on issues of mutual interest. So indeed, as representatives of your respective countries in Nairobi, I also encourage you to engage us at all levels on any matter before the United Nations Security Council, the United Nations General Assembly, as well as on any other issues that would advance our common agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most critical emerging challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic is, and one of that is of particular concern to me and my administration, and that is the pandemic's impact on education. The global COVID-19 pandemic has amplified the challenges facing our education sector across the world and constrained our capacities and capabilities to guarantee our children inalienable and fundamental right to quality education. So therefore, as most governments reprioritize limited budgets in order to address the urgent health and social protection concerns, there is a risk that education may be sidelined. My administration has put education at the front and center of our development strategy, investing in quality education as the surest way to prepare our children and youth to seize the opportunities of the 21st century and make meaningful contributions to Kenya's development agenda. I believe that your respective countries equally cherish these sentiments. The current situation thereby places us on a significant crossroad. We cannot fail the young children of our nations, and education must not be compromised, and the tremendous progress we have made on education cannot be slowed down. It is for this reason that Kenya and the United Kingdom plan to co-host the Global Partnership for Education Financing Conference on the 28th and the 29th of July 2021 in London, with the aim of raising $5 billion to ensure continued equitable access to education for children and youth across the world. This aspiration is captured in our Big Four agenda, which is a framework to organize and prioritize the delivery of government services towards the realization of our Vision 2030. The four components of this agenda, of which I am sure you are all aware, are: first, to increase our manufacturing share to GDP to 15% in order to offer decent employment to Kenyans, and also to gear towards reducing our trade deficit. We have, again, as many of you know, consistently improved the business environment, and we are now close to achieving the set target of 50 in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking, having been ranked at 56 in 2020. This is an unprecedented turnaround, given that Kenya was at position 136 in 2016. We are also on course to establish special economic zones and industrial parks across our country. The second, which is dearest to my heart, is the realization of universal access to healthcare. We have seen and we seek to improve equitable access to affordable health services and address the high disease burden. Our investment in health financing, improved service delivery, increased personnel, the digitization of our health records, and better access to quality medical equipment are slowly bearing fruit. And we are now, currently in this year, rolling out the universal healthcare program across the country. These measures have strengthened our health system, improved our health to our citizens, and also enabled us to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are not without problems, but we are facing our challenges head-on, and towards that end, I want to thank each and every one of you who have participated with us in this endeavor, and I hope that we shall continue to work together. In particular, I want to note the assistance from Japan, which has been critical in helping us roll out the universal healthcare agenda. The third is to achieve affordable housing. And despite the COVID-19 pandemic, we have broken ground on several projects in 2020. The housing program, supported by a sound policy, has created a conducive business environment for the building and construction sector. It has provided subsidized land, tax breaks, flexible payment options, and a framework for public-private partnerships, even in the provision of government, military, and police housing. The program maintains an active pipeline of projects championed by both government and private sector. Here again, I want to thank those governments that have lent support to this agenda, and indeed it is my belief that we shall have in the near future the greatest rollout of housing and decent housing for our people that has been seen in many years. To address food insecurity, we have had an ambitious program and targeted 3.3 million households, which are most at risk. We have currently achieved a 50% reduction in the number of food insecure Kenyans, a 34% increase in the average daily income of farmers, and a 47% reduction in the cost of food as a percentage of incomes. And this success has been achieved through various targeted interventions, many of which we are implementing in partnership with many of you. Let me, however, hasten to add that this transformation that we seek towards a prosperous and equitable society is still very much a work in progress. In the coming days, we will be extending an invitation to your respective governments to participate and support this initiative, and your valued participation will make a lasting statement to the children of the world that despite the challenges of our time, we are not willing to compromise on their future. I also wish to thank the United Nations for the establishment of the Generation Unlimited Initiative. This multi-stakeholder global alliance aims to ensure that young people between the ages of 10 and 24 are either in education, training, or employment by 2020. Indeed, as a global leader for Gen U, I invite you to embrace this path-breaking program and support Kenya to develop sustainable pathways for nurturing and preparing our young people for the future. Continuing Excellencies, in spite of the loss and disruption, as well as the upheavals caused by COVID-19, new opportunities and important lessons have emerged. The pandemic has strengthened our resolve to find innovative solutions and validated our homegrown answers to global challenges. It has spurred industry, research, and innovation at a pace unforeseen in past years. These developments have inspired renewed confidence across the world as well as our continent, and will continue to enhance our contribution and participation. In this regard, I am particularly proud to have had the opportunity to serve as a member of the Bureau of the Chairperson of the African Union under the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa. And in the Bureau, we were able for the very first time, the African continent, to coordinate strategic and innovative African solutions to the challenges we faced with the COVID-19 pandemic on the continent. We also engaged international partners, including the World Health Organization, all who helped us in confronting the pandemic. At this critical phase of the pandemic, therefore, we must continue to work together, or, as has been stated, we shall fail together. Kenya remains an anchor for regional peace and security. Our contribution to peace and security is inspired by an understanding that conflicts are rarely isolated occurrences, confined within national borders, and their effects are often regional as well as global. We recognize that Kenya's fate is intricately intertwined with that of our neighbors. Unfortunately, as is well known to all of you, our region remains in a state of constant flux, with volatility triggered by security challenges as well as climate change-induced vulnerabilities. Therefore, the COVID-19 pandemic which struck early last year, has hit the Horn of Africa region that was already grappling with the largest locust invasion in recent years, as well as wide-scale flooding, which, in many instances, has occasioned massive displacement, loss of lives, livelihoods, and now our region is facing a looming threat of famine. Further, the region has been a theater of geopolitical competition unfortunately from extra-regional interests. This, compounded with the threat posed by terrorism, remains real, despite the positive strides made in curbing the scourge of terrorism. All these factors compound an already dire human situation or humanitarian situation, and combined, they continue to test our resolve to achieve shared prosperity for our region. But there is also some good news. There are several positive developments also, which I invite all of you to note and to continue to support. In South Sudan, despite the challenges that are known to all of us, the peace process remains on course, and the progress made in tackling key contentious issues, we must say, is laudable, and in particular the recent steps towards completing the formation of the transitional government of national unity at the state and local government levels, including finally the appointment of the governor of the Upper Nile. However, the establishment of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly remains a critical imperative. Equally important is also the urgency to implement the transitional security arrangements. And here, we look forward to working with all partners to achieving the peace and stability of our neighbors in the South Sudan. In Sudan, over the last months, the democratic transition is on course, and the transitional government has implemented significant governance, legal, as well as structural reforms. The signing of the Juba Peace Agreement was a landmark achievement, and its implementation is on track. Fast-tracking the establishment of the Transitional Legislative Council is critical in delivering the necessary reforms and tackling the economic situation in the country. To this end, I continue with my appeal to the international community and all development partners to continue to support Sudan's endeavors to achieve their objectives and to bring about peace, stability, as well as prosperity in a very difficult economic climate. In Ethiopia, the government has indicated to us that their law enforcement operation is over and that the rehabilitation process in Tigray is underway. Kenya, as a brotherly country to Ethiopia, will continue to encourage efforts to, one, provide information on any excesses by either side that may have been committed, as well as endeavor to hasten the much-needed humanitarian assistance to that troubled part of Ethiopia. Kenya, in line with its long-standing position, continues to hope for greater and lasting reconciliation in Ethiopia, a country that is a critical partner to Kenya and indeed the region. As you all know, Kenya has for a long time invested heavily also in the process of restoring stability in Somalia. Our prime motivation has always been to see a stable Somalia, a peaceful neighbor with whom we share a long history and with whom the opportunities to grow and prosper together are boundless. A peaceful coexistence with Somalia is therefore key to us, despite the rhetoric. Enhancing a spirit of cooperation and solidarity for the development and benefit of our peoples in both countries, as well as for the prosperous and integrated region of the Horn, is critical to us, and we remain committed to working with Somalians, with the international community, to achieve these objectives. Furthermore, the African Union mission in Somalia has been at the forefront of supporting Somalia's transition and stabilization efforts, and the mission could continue to play this pivotal role beyond 2021. Considering the prevailing security situation in Somalia, Kenya and other troop-contributing countries have called for the extension of the mandate of AMISOM. The ongoing drawdown of the mission has already exposed the potential risk of severely undermining the gains made, and we see al-Shabaab taking advantage to claim abandoned territory. AMISOM will require greater support, particularly adequate and predictable funding, including drawing funding from the UN-assessed contributions, as well as equipping it with the requisite force enablers and force multipliers. Kenya will continue, and I reiterate, to cooperate and collaborate with the international community to see a peaceful, stable Somalia, which is in much our interest as it is in theirs. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who have been in our country for a significant amount of time must have noted that Kenya is a country of farmers. It is also a country of techno-savvy entrepreneurs, and also has probably the most vibrant private sector in the region. We in Kenya believe firmly in creating the best and most enabling environment for promoting business and entrepreneurship in order to drive greater prosperity for our people. In this regard, Kenya recognizes the strength and promise of regional integration, and we remain fully committed to our obligations and responsibilities at the East African Community, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, as well as the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. Kenya also believes in the promise of Africa. We are fully committed to building new frameworks and to develop innovative solutions that are African-inspired, African-led, and that speak to Africa's needs as well as our priorities. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area typifies the vision of a prosperous Africa at peace with herself and occupying her rightful place on the world stage. Indeed, as the rest of the world grapples with growing protectionism, Africa has chosen the path towards greater partnership, closer collaboration, and shared prosperity. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area will not only consolidate our efforts to realize the dream of a prosperous and integrated Africa, but also propel our economies, I believe, to a higher growth trajectory. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is also working with the African Union member states, as well as other economic and political formations in the world, to define how the world relates not only to Kenya, but to our continent, including in the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. For Kenya, key pillars of this realignment involves reinvigorated and dynamic engagements with the United States of America through the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, as well as our continued engagement with the prospective free trade agreement. And with the European Union also through the economic partnership agreements, and also with the United Kingdom through or after post-Brexit. I want to thank you for your ongoing support to these programs, and indeed invite you to redouble your efforts and work with us to rebuild the growth momentum towards the social economic transformation of our country as we work together for that reinvigoration of the global economy. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like now to move to our Constitution. It is 10 years since Kenya adopted a new constitution. And over this period, we have undertaken far-reaching reforms in the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative arms of government. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, I would go as far as to say that no country has introduced as far-reaching constitutional reforms and programs as has Kenya in such a short period of time. We have expanded the freedoms of all Kenyans, devolved systems of governance, and we have reformed the public service as well as our security sector. However, we have noted and listened to the voices of Kenyans who are still yearning for a deeper sense of national unity, inclusivity, peace and reconciliation, as well as prosperity. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why in March of 2018, I invited the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, to launch the Building Bridges Initiative that we now call BBI, and a task force was put in place. This task force has completed its work. It has submitted its report, a report that has elicited a great deal of public debate. The report extensively evaluates our national challenges and makes robust and comprehensive practical recommendations to address these challenges. The public debate that is ongoing, and which I am sure many of you are following, is indeed a healthy one, and we encourage it. This is because the BBI is about perennial issues that we need to address as a nation, particularly political transitions, negative ethnicity, inclusion, equitable development, as well as our fight against corruption. We are convinced that these debates epitomize our democratic culture and our commitment to popular participation as well as ownership. I want to, however, clarify that the BBI does not promise to settle all the constitutional questions through a singular amendment. It is a starting point to a continuous process of constitution making for our young nation, aimed at achieving three planks, namely, to manage diversity and to institutionalize inclusivity in Kenya. Secondly, to strengthen devolution by increasing funds allocated to our counties by the national government. And lastly, to ensure that every Kenyan has a just and fair avenue for participation in the action of government through increased representation.
Base yetu yawaletea shujaa wa Base Pool Table Championships Meru Edition. Tuma wachezaji wawili gwiji kutoka Base yako tarehe 8 hadi 14 Machi mwaka huu na mshinde hafamili 200k ama 100k. Ni tarehe 8 hadi 14 Machi mwaka huu pale Gitoro Conference Hall Makutano. Vunja weka wa dial *483*8888# kuregister Base yako.